Good morning. I'd like to start by welcoming the members of the public who have joined us today. It's fantastic to see so many people in the gallery to join us. And also the press who have joined us today in Huntingdon and those that are watching online by the live stream as well. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. Can I just ask that everyone checks their mobile phone to make sure it's on silent? I will do the same. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, but if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all move to the muster point. So out the door this way and then towards the high street. I would remind all members and officers that the meeting is being recorded. And we also have a very full agenda today. So if the meeting becomes lengthy, I will take the opportunity to have a short comfort break in the proceedings. So the first item on our agenda is announcements and apologies for absence. Can I ask our governance manager of any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Tim Jones, the Business Board representative, and also from Councillor Smith. And hence we have Councillor Davenport-Ray chairing this morning.
Yes, we send our best wishes to Councillor Smith, who's not able to be with us today. Do we have a overview and scrutiny rapporteur with us today?
Not this morning, no.
Okay. So the next item 2 is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-statutory disclosable interest in any of the items being considered today? So as always, declarations of interest can be raised at any point later in the agenda if something occurs to you that you didn't think of now. Item 3 is the minutes in the action log. So in terms of minutes, we had a learning session together in September, but our last official meeting was actually back in July. So those are the minutes we're being asked to approve. Are members happy to approve the minutes from 31 July as accurate and record, or are there any points you'd like to make? Right, I'll take that as a consensus that we are happy to do that. Do I need to do that now? Okay, we'll catch up on that. We've also been asked to note the action log, which is in our agenda. Are there any comments on that before we mark it as noted? Our action log for our committee. Not seeing anyone would like to raise anything, so we'll mark that as noted by the members. This is great. It's going very efficiently. We have 15 items on the agenda, and this is very promising. Number 4 is public questions. Can I ask if we have received any public questions?
No, none for today.
Right. I would just mention to those in the public gallery and those watching online, we always have this item on our agenda available for public questions, and we really welcome them. So love to see more in the future. Item 5 is the forward plan. And I would just highlight that this is the forward plan for the Combined Authority as a whole. And it's brought to each of our committees so that we have a chance to review. Are members happy to note the Combined Authority's forward plan or any points that want to be raised? Okay, so we've been asked to note the action plan, which I think we have done, and no vote is required on that item. So now we move into the area of our agenda where we have 2 speakers who have agreed to come and update us on a few topics. So agenda item number 6 is the Great Ouse Valley Trust. So I will invite Graham Campbell to join us down at the other end of the room here. So Graham is the chairman of the Great Ouse Valley Trust. He's going to give a presentation and then we'll be able to ask him questions after. Graham, I'm afraid I need to be very strict on time today because our agenda is so lengthy. I will indicate to you when you've got a minute left because I often forget myself when I'm giving a presentation. Welcome, Graham. Please give us your update on the Great Ouse Valley Trust.
Thank you very much. I'll do my best to rush through this presentation. The Great Ouse Valley Trust has been striving for years to get proper recognition of our wonderful landscape in the Ouse Valley. One of the things we've been aiming for is to get, for many years, is Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, ANOB. That is now known as a national landscape. So our focus in the last year has been on trying to achieve national landscape status for this unique landscape. Where is the Great Ouse? Is that slightly out of order, I think? Oh, right, okay. Where is this landscape? Well, here it is. You can see it. And the essential thing is, this is this very slither of land, of beautiful landscape, tranquil landscape that winds its way across our county. The interesting thing is that from the south of it, we have a landscape of rich meadowland going through this wonderful wetland around Huntingdon St Ives, and then finally going up to the internationally renowned Ouse Washes. So the whole landscape taken as a package is totally unique in the UK. There's nothing like it. The other significant thing, why we think it should be a national landscape, as you can see from this map, and you all know very well, that in the south part of the county, of the area, we have these towns of Huntingdon St Ives, St Neots, Godmanchester and so on, and villages, all expanding rapidly, all urbanising. And I think we all accept that's inevitable and not necessarily a bad thing. But it does mean that all those towns and villages have access to this very special, unique landscape, which doesn't exist anywhere else. So this is why we are so passionate about it. And also within Cambridgeshire, it slices across Cambridgeshire, and we're very aware that Cambridge obviously is one of the great international centres for science and technology. It attracts businesses, attracts big companies, attracts the brightest and the best from around the world. How wonderful to have a national landscape within our county, pride of place, so easily accessible from Cambridge. We have a busway, which is another wonderful thing. It means we can have sustainable tourism from Cambridge into this unique landscape. But who are the Great Ouse Valley Trust? Well, we were founded in 2018, but we've been going for many years as an AONB working group. The important thing is, though, that we represent a very broad spectrum of people. We are a coalition of all the parish councils, or the majority of the parish councils and town councils, the National Trust, the RSPB, CPRE, Rotaries, local groups, local conservation groups, and users of the valley for recreation. So we've got runners and fishermen as well. So we all came together in 2018, and we seek to promote, enhance, and conserve the special landscape of the Great Ouse Valley. We've had a very successful 6 years. We've been planting woodland, we've been restoring meadows, we've had community workshops, we're testing the quality of the river, water quality. We've got many aspects of our work, but one of our prime aims remains to try and get national landscape designation for this special landscape. Cambridgeshire is the least wooded county in the country. Giving us national landscape would bring us onto the same level as Dedham Vale in Essex or the Chilterns. It would give Cambridgeshire a real stake in the future. We think this is so important to our county. Doesn't seem to want to go forward. Can I have the next slide? Yes. So what else have we got here? Well, very specifically, this just shows three of the real crucial elements that we have in our landscape. The floodplain meadows, absolutely unique. Porthole Meadow represents 7% of the total UK lowland unimproved hay meadows in the country. The Ouse Fen project, massive successful project within our area. And of course, the Ouse Washes, largest area of seasonally flooded land in the UK. These are all incredibly important part of our landscape. But why do we want a national landscape? What benefits would it bring to us? Well, apart from putting Cambridgeshire on the map, it's the idea of managing the whole area holistically from the point of view of the economy, nature, health and tourism. It's a unique opportunity for us to take this forward. But it's not only the natural beauty of the place. We have a rich cultural and artistic heritage. Cromwell, of course, we all know. Lucy Boston's house, the oldest inhabited house in England. Houghton Mill, which is very interesting because within our area, we have the most extensive area of watermill heritage of anywhere in the country. We were the richest, wealthiest area for watermills anywhere in the UK. Another aspect which makes our landscape absolutely unique. And don't forget the incredible artistic heritage within the Ouse Valley. Turn of the century, we were an artist colony. We haven't got a constable, but I would suggest that our landscape is unique and just as good as Dedham Vale. What is really interesting, though, in the idea of a national landscape is to look at the whole country and see where the national parks and national landscapes exist at the moment. It's quite clear from this map that all the main national parks and landscapes are in the upland areas of the south of England, the west and the north. There's some coastal ones that we've mentioned already, Dedham Vale and Suffolk Coast. But this vast area of the East Midlands and East Anglia is void of any protected landscape. And that's not to say that we haven't got wonderful landscapes. It's just that the criteria they've used in the past has tended to favour mountains and coasts. But Natural England, who are the people who recommend to the government these designations, have already said that the number one possibility for a national landscape would be our Ouse Valley. Unfortunately, over the years, because of the amount of pressure on, there's so much work on at the moment, there's so much pressure on Natural England dealing with local nature recovery strategies, national parks and so on. They have not been able to spend the effort and time to look at a new national landscape, which is very unfortunate. But you can see from this how important it would be. Got some trouble with this? Oh, right. So the point is the formation of a national landscape for our area, it's not a question of holding things back. We understand that development will take place. We're not bothered about that at all. It's the idea of protecting this very special landscape because of its uniqueness and also its connection to the urban areas that are growing. It's well documented, very well documented. The designation of a national landscape of ANOB brings great economic benefits to the country. So there's a business case to be had. And I think this is now recognised by Huntingdonshire District Council, who have joined us in taking this forward. And we're very grateful for their support. But they clearly understand the significance of what we're trying to achieve here. I mean, I'll just go on with some statistics. You can see here, this is our area and how much of the area is already recognised. Natural Cambridgeshire as a priority landscape, living landscapes by the Wildlife Trust. There are all these wonderful places within our area already, but it's not coordinated. It's not. It's the holistic approach to management that we think can bring such benefits to the economy, to the health of the residents and really bring pride of place to Cambridgeshire. I know we've already got a lot of pride of place, but this would focus it and bring a benefit, as I've said before, to Cambridge City, particularly as an attraction to bring businesses and the brightest and the best from all around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. I have to say, I am a bit partial as the member representing Huntingdonshire today. I'm very proud of this landscape as well. And the residents of Huntingdonshire have so much on the doorstep to enjoy that we hope we can share with others. We're going to open up for questions to Graham, but I'm going to kick off with the first one. Graham, you mentioned being supported by lots of different organizations across the region. I suppose that's the main question you might be asked in an application. How do you know you have support for this project from people across Cambridgeshire?
Well, one of the things we've done in the last few years is to hold very large community workshops in different sections. We've had three. We split our area into 3 sections and invited businesses, parishes, conservation groups, and so on, from all those areas to these community workshops, which weren't sort of 5-minute things. They lasted a whole day. We had professional organisation, very well received. And out of those workshops, rather than just having a talking shop, we came out with very positive results and projects going forward. And one of those, of course, is the National Landscape Designation. And all those reports are published and they're available from us if who wants to see them. But the support across the board from landowners, farmers, town councils and so on has been very, very good. Excellent.
Councillor Day?
Oh, I've got it. I've got a green light. Thank you. Obviously, you know, we're very aware that protecting these natural landscapes can really benefit issues such as climate change. So I'm really interested to see the work that you're doing. And my question was, why is the Great Ouse Valley Trust the organisation best suited to take forward the self-designation of an official landscape project?
Well, I think it's obviously going to be a partnership, hopefully with Combined Authority and District Council. But I think, as I've said, it's because we do represent such a broad base, right from very grassroots. We're not sort of top down, if that's the right term. But I think the fact that we have the big conservation groups, the National Trust behind us, and RSPB, as well as local people, and Rotary as well have been very supportive of us. I think that's why, as a group, we are very well placed to be leading this. Apart from the fact that we have been working on this for a very long time, we have an immense amount of data. We've researched other national landscapes, see how they work, how they're funded, what the benefits are, and we have all that information now at our fingertips.
I think the mayor has indicated he has a question.
Just right. Graham, welcome to the Combined Authority, and thank you for, on many occasions, yourself and the Ouse Valley Trust making me very welcome at some of the community group meetings that you've had, and also giving me the time to show you what I kind of already knew, but with you leading and following on from Nicola's question, I think you are very well placed to be flying the flag for the Great Ouse Valley Trust. I don't know how obvious it is, but ever since I walked into those first meetings, it seemed ridiculous that you didn't already have this sort of designation. I was lucky enough to grow up in a part of the country that has national parks coming out of its ears, and designation and, you know, recognition of the landscape. And I know, as a proud Northeasterner, how sometimes the landscape kind of forms a sort of sense of identity. And that's something I think the Great Ouse Valley Trust has done in bucket loads. Moving to the area, I've always enjoyed the amenities, the beauty. Only this year, on New Year's Day, I was in the Ouse Valley's Washers being blasted by some really driving rain, but watching the swans come in. All I want to say is you have my complete and utter word that as a mayor, I will actually ask every single, and I would say to all the members here, I would want to get behind this. We have been doing that in the background. I hope you realise that in the conversations that we already have had, working with Judith and the conversations, you know, this blockage about not being able to get to a natural landscape designation has been as frustrating to me as I'm sure it has been to you who've been doing it a lot longer. But in all the time that I have any leverage in the role of being the mayor and working with the board and indeed representatives here, I would suggest that is an absolute priority, which we need to put the efforts of officers, elected members, and indeed, if necessary, money to get this over the line sooner rather than later.
Did you want to
Could
respond to that?
Could I just say, we're very grateful for that support, and we have talked with Dr. Nick in the past, and he's been very supportive. We're very grateful for that. In the short term, we are considering some sort of self-designation proposal with the district council as a stepping stone towards full national landscape, and that's something that we're discussing at the moment, and hopefully we can report back on that. But our aim, of course, is the full national landscape designation.
So I'll bring in another question. In terms of reaching that national designation, what are the next steps? And it sounds like we have consensus that we think this is a good idea. What can our committee do to help, or what can we be doing to help in those next steps?
I suppose the public support you're offering now is the first step. And if we do move towards some sort of self-designation, I don't know what we'd call it. It's been suggested by someone at District Council, it might be called a regional park. Once you've got that definition there, and you start to, there are precedents for this self-designation regional park, the Colne Valley in West London. The National Trust are looking at one south of Birmingham, and also the extension of Dedham Vale is treated as a national landscape as far as the local authorities are concerned. So I think if we can move, that will be the stepping stone, and that will, if your support would be very, very, very helpful. We're very grateful for that.
Mayor?
I just wanted to add, we have this week released our shared ambition, a document which was numerous local authorities, local organisations have all sort of signed up to and worked towards. And this as a project sits perfectly in terms of a shared ambition. I mean, the one thing I always liked about it, and thinking about how it could bring board representation across, is that it covers so many areas of the actual combined authority. And, recognising that you have, call it what you want, protected landscape and a new sort of temporary designation. It's something I believe, it doesn't matter if you live in Fenland, East Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire, South Cambs, it's all very relevant to you. And I love how it sits in the middle of it. And I think it's a beacon that we should get behind, exactly what the shared ambition was about.
Councillor Dupre?
Thank you. It was wonderful to see the slides, and it is such a beautiful landscape. I live in Sutton, so not too far from Erith Bulwark, which I recognised in one of your slides there. And that combination of the natural and the historic is absolutely amazing. It's a very distinctive landscape, and one that I really think needs to be recognised and formally recognised. I'd give that my full support. I'm not here in this capacity today, but I am a member of East Cambridgeshire District Council. I would absolutely love to hear more from you about it, because I won't hear about this directly from the District Council, and I would love to be engaged in what you're doing and lend my support in every way I possibly can to this.
Do we have any further questions for Graham? Thank you very much for joining us today, Graham. It's a very interesting project and we hope to see it succeed in the near future. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I'd like to welcome our member from Fenland District Council who's joined us today. No? Oh, this is Tim. Thank you very much. You're our rapporteur from Overview and Scrutiny. Fantastic. You sat down next to Councillor Tierney's nameplate. This is where my confusion arises from.
Just,
Welcome.
oh, sorry, Chair, through you, but just a quick question with regard to attendance. We are recording now who, you know, non-attendance, attendance, all that. Because I know that was something we were bringing forward. Okay, thanks. Nice to see you as well.
So now I'd like to welcome, I'm not sure if we're going to have one or two guests from the A428 project. Oh, fantastic. So I'm going to welcome Anne-Marie Rogers and Roberts from National Highways. And so they will give a presentation and then we'll have time for questions afterwards, just as with the last agenda item. So if you press the middle button on your microphone, that will activate it.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Rogers. I'm project manager on the A428. It's my colleague Penny, who hasn't used Zoom before. Oh, you have to switch. Yeah. Apologies, we're all Teams, so Zoom's a new one to me. So good morning. So my name's Penny Roberts, and I'm the environmental lead for the A428 project. Anne-Marie is one of National Highways senior project managers, so we work together based on our offices just outside of St Neots. So today we're going to give you a brief overview of the A428 scheme. Obviously I appreciate it's a local scheme, a lot of people know about it, we've got a few statistics on it. And then again, just briefly on environmental mitigation measures actually on site, so during construction. So how we are mitigating our impact on the environment to reduce it where we possibly, and obviously minimising at all times where we can. And then I'm going to touch on as well compliance measures that we do. So we can do physical stuff out on site, but how do we keep ourselves in check? How do we make sure that we are compliant at all times? So first off, couple of statistics on the scheme. So 16 kilometres of new dual carriageway. I think that's about 10 miles in old money. We've got 39 new significant structures. So that's road bridges, footbridges, culverts. We're diverting a number of watercourses, putting culverts in. If you're driving around the area at the moment, you'll see things changing quite substantially. If you drive up the A1, from the Black Cat roundabout where Brook Cottages used to be, there's a new culvert going in there. We diverted Brook Cottages so you can see culverts in the ground. Obviously when the road's finished, it'll all be covered over, you won't see it. We're also moving an awful lot of earth as well. So we are digging great big holes in the scheme and we are using that material that we dig out to make structures so that we are minimising our material that we bring in. And the idea is we have a balance of what we call a cut and a fill. So we cut out and we fill from our structures. So there should be no material coming in from the project, which reduces our costs and it reduces our carbon footprint as well. And then environmental information there, we've got 19 kilometres of environmental fencing for our Great Crested Newts. So again, if you drive around the area, you'll see the green fencing. It's about 1 metre high. That's our GCM fencing. And we've got, like I say, 19 kilometres of that. Primarily in Cambridgeshire, we're doing a different type of regulation in Bedfordshire. So there's just kind of some high level information on the scheme itself. But moving on to environmental aspects and impacts, one of our main challenges at the moment is water management and silt management. So we will strip the topsoil of surface to get ready for construction. And obviously then you've got bare pieces of land. When it rains, that soil becomes mobile and can wash into rivers. We've also, like I say, got great big holes on the site at the moment where we're putting culverts in. We're putting in for bridge bowls for construction structures. They are obviously gathering water at the moment with the heavy rains that we've had. We might then need to go into those areas, so we need to dewater that. So we need to take that water out. And how all that is managed is to make sure that we're not causing silt to go into our nearby watercourses. So really important that we get silt mitigation fencing up before we start work. We protect the watercourses from any runoff. This filters the soil, so it just allows water to go into the rivers and not silt itself. The photograph from the screen actually is from Hembrook last year. Hembrook is one of our watercourses that is notorious for flooding. We're putting in flood alleviation culverts in there to try to minimise this impact where we can. But we are having to manage water like this on site and obviously allow the construction to work to take place as well. So water management in the winter is a massive challenge for us. And we need to put those measures in place to prevent silt getting into watercourses. Ecology is another challenge that we have as well. We've done a number of surveys over the last 4 or 5 years to identify what species of animals we've got in the area. This helps enable our mitigation during construction, but also helps informs our design. So for example, we've identified a number of bats that move in a particular location of the scheme. We are building, it's about 4 or 5 metre high tunnel under the road to enable the bats to still move around once the road's been built, and other mammals as well. But those surveys have helped inform that design. So we're trying to allow animals to move around after construction, and then during construction, this is when our mitigation, our GCM fencing comes in. So we've put the fencing up. We take the great crested newts out of the construction area. The fencing stays up during construction, so any animals, any GCNs that try to come in can't because that fencing's there. So we've taken them out of the construction area. We do our work, and then we've got those measures in place, like I say, the bat tunnel for animals to move once the roads open to traffic. We've also built artificial badger sets, so our surveys have helped inform where we've got badger sets on the scheme. Ones that are closed permanently, we have to build an artificial set before we close the real set. We will monitor that set for at least 21 days to make sure they've come out. We have to also check to make sure that they've found the new artificial set as well before we close their current set. And we're only allowed to do that in a very short period of time between the 1st of July and the end of November, because that allows for them to hibernate and to breed. So we have quite a small window from Natural England there to enable us to do that. But we've got licenses and that's in place at the moment. Our sets are in place and they found 2 out of 3 of the artificial sets. So looking good at the moment. A couple of examples as well from the site. So some photographs. So that's the great crested newt fencing, the green fencing there. When it loads eventually, you'll get to see signage out on site. So these signs are for the site team. So this is in the construction area. It's identifying ecological areas that they need to be aware of. It's getting them to stop and pause so they don't go into those areas and cause harm. So we tend to put the yellow and black chain around the trees. So we're protecting not only the trees, but the root protection zone as well. The red signs there we found a badger set. It just says keep out. We don't identify that there's a badger set in there at all, but we're telling the site team that there's a risk there on site so they don't go into those areas and cause any damage. Just as a point of interest, the ramp photograph on the left. So what we were finding in that particular location was that badgers were pushing through the fencing, damaging the fencing. So we put up some really good thick plastic fencing and so prevent them from digging underneath, because badgers are quite persistent. They will follow the same route. We've put this ramp in place now. So instead of digging underneath, we're hoping that they'll use the ramp over the top. We have got a camera up. We haven't seen any badgers go over it yet. We have seen mammals go over it. And just as a point of interest, there is a gap at the top of the ramp between that and the fence. So great crested newts can't leap over the ramp. So we have prevented them from escaping the area. Just touching on landscaping as well, once the screen loads. So the project has been designed so there'll be no net loss of biodiversity. Our landscaping design is being finalised at the moment, but currently we're looking to plant, like it says there, just under 80,000 trees, about 200,000 hedges and shrubs, and we are also putting aquatic plants in our ponds as well in areas. We have engaged early with our supply chain. There are experts in this area of specialism. They know what works well in these areas. They know what plants work well. So we've engaged with them, got their feedback, and that has helped inform our landscape design as well. And we've also engaged with the local authority as part of our engagement to get feedback on drawings and comments. So we have gone far and wide to get feedback. We've also engaged with other projects as well, national highways projects and other construction projects, to get feedback on, to make sure our landscape design will be as successful as it possibly can be. And then just touching as well, so we are one of National Highways' digital by default projects. So we're trying to move everything to digital. And one of the things that we're using on the project, not just for environment, is our GIS system. So when it loads, you can screenshot this example there, what we're using. So this is identifying all our environmental risks, where our watercourses are. It will eventually load. There is another part to that. There you go. So where our watercourses are, where our sensitive receptors residents are, we've got contaminated land in there, we've got ecology, we've also got structures and all the other information for the project. So everyone on the project has access to this system. You can use it on your mobile phone, you can use it on your tablet, you can use it from a laptop. So it's up to date and current information. So it's identifying all the risks, all the challenges, so that the workers on site work and don't cause any environmental harm. And if they do come across something that you're about, a sign on site, for example, they will stop and they will inform the environment team. We have a small environment team on the project. They'll stop work and ask us and get advice and guidance before proceeding. So we do lots of engagement with our workforce. We do toolbox talks with them to keep them aware of all these risks on site and all the action to take if they don't know what to do. We're not expecting them to be experts, but we are expecting them, and they do stop and ask where they can. And then just one final thing, just another example of our digital by default. We have positive intervention app as well. Again, it's on a phone. Every member of the workforce has got this. If they see something good or bad on site for environment or safety, they can report it. It's quite immediate, it's really simple to complete, but it's an immediate way of highlighting good and bad on site. We as the environment team review this, we gather data on it to see where the risks are, where the good and the bad are on site, and it helps inform our training and our communication to the team to keep them updated on good things that are happening, as well as lessons to be learned for our construction project. That's it.
Thank you, Anne Marie and Penny. So we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. If I just went back a few steps to a few meetings ago, the chair, who's not able to be here with us, and I expressed that this is a project that goes through both of our personal wards that we represent. So it's something that we drive through every day and our residents are very interested in. So although it has a very wider impact, it's something we're very aware of. And I think the mayor lives very close to the scheme as well. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Hearing all of this about another big national highways project in our area, I'm obviously going to be thinking back to the A14. And the experience of the A14 project was in many respects not great. I think trees was one of the biggest issues. But a couple of days ago, 3 days ago, at Cambridge County Council, a motion was unanimously passed relating to the experience of the A14 and wanting to make sure that the things that happened there that were not so great didn't happen again. In particular, I mean, there were lots of things about landlocked buildings and defectively constructed structures and so on, which are not the business of this meeting. But two of the things that was a comment that, and the council expressed concern that the project was supposed to deliver improved biodiversity and reduced pollution, but there is no evidence to ensure these things have happened, and no transparency about measurements post-construction or the basis on which the project was signed off by ministers. And the council resolved, among other things, to make a formal request for National Highways to do various things, including making public the information about the impact on biodiversity. So my question is, what lessons does National Highways feel it's learned from the A14? And in the light of those lessons learned, and I'm glad you mentioned lessons learned, what confidence can we have that we will not see a repeat of the things that went wrong with the A14, and that we can look forward to the kind of construction and the kind of changes on the A428 that we would have wanted to have seen? Thank you.
Hi. Firstly, we were invited here to talk about the A428. I can tell you that we've taken on board lessons learned from many schemes, not just the A14, not just those that were delivered by National Highways. Our landscaping strategy is largely informed by the things that we've learned from others. So we do progress. We are a national company. We've got a lot of resources to take on board from. We do publish our environmental data. We have already published our POPE. It's online, and that's a post-operational project evaluation. That's already there. So that's a habitual thing for National Highways. We publish our POPE 1, 3 and 5 years. That happens across the board. So the information is already available.
If I can just come back to clarify, I wasn't asking you specifically about the A14. My question was forward-looking about the A428 and the level of confidence that we can have in the A428 in the light of that particular experience that we had. That was all.
So I'll follow that one up with a specific question about the 428, which I think is related. So when residents are driving down the road at the moment, they will have noticed the loss of tree canopy. And so you mentioned a plan for 78,000 trees and 200,000 hedges and shrubs, which I'm really happy to hear about that. I have two questions. One is, how do we keep the users of the road up to date on that, what they have to look forward to, so they know that's coming? And the second is, with those statistics, do we know how many trees and hedges were there before? So rather than just no biodiversity net loss, do we know that there's no tree canopy net loss?
So we won't start planting until later this year, and certainly the section by the Black Cat. So most of our landscaping won't start until next winter. And absolutely, we can keep people informed. We do various public engagement events. We have a social media post. I think we have a monthly bulletin that goes out by email. We keep people updated with the construction, so we can absolutely, once we start planting and we've got some data to share, we can share that information and keep people updated on that. With regard to the trees that were there versus the trees that have been planted, we use the National Highways, no we don't, Natural England Biodiversity Net Gain tool, which basically there's a calculation and an assessment that is a uniformed approach to calculating biodiversity net gain. You assign a score to the habitat, to the quality of the habitat, and then you similarly assign the same score for the habitat that you're putting in. So you're doing a comparison before and after. So we've done that. We did that assessment. Like I said, we've done lots of surveys over many years to identify the species and the animals. So we knew what was there, the quality of what was there as well, because it wasn't always really good quality habitats. We know the species type and the quality of it, and we've worked out what it was as a score, and we're now working out what it will be for our landscaping design. And that score will be larger than what's being taken out.
Councillor Goodall?
My question's just been answered, basically. I was going to say that it was great that you put up there's no biodiversity net loss, but shouldn't we be heading for a biodiversity net gain overall?
So there will be an increase. We are still yet to finalise our landscape design, so we're not sure what it is, but it definitely will be an increase.
Mayor?
Hello again. I think, sorry, I wasn't at the meeting yesterday. I was virtually in attendance. So sort of kind of following on from Councillor Dupre, I'm going to acknowledge that you've done a very different job for what I can see. Yes, there is a comparison with another big infrastructure project, the A14, and undoubtedly there was a lot of disappointment with, particularly with the results of trees that were planted then died. I appreciate there were some particular challenges with very challenging and very hot summers. And as I understand it, the process of replacing those to go to the A14 has moved on. And I want to acknowledge that I think that you have engaged, certainly with myself, and we have officers now at the Combined Authority. I know officers of the County Council, HDC, and that's obviously going across political parties as well. I think one of the problems when you make the comparison with the A14 was that much as though it was a project that maybe most people felt was needed, and rather strangely to have another big infrastructure project so close by in nearby. I say that as a comment moving away without saying, should we build in roads and whatever. It was more that there was a sense of the community didn't come with you on the A14. And I want to acknowledge what you have done and you have promised in terms of using community groups going forward. Now, I know I've made that specific request that, you know, the oversight working with your organisation, but bringing in volunteer groups, community groups to be part of the BioNet diversity gain and kind of being with their Irish authority that are looking into that. You said when we can, we will be able to do that. So I think that is going to be important going forward. And going back to Councillor Dupre's point, you know, you have over the course of time, it's been brought up at meetings about the disappointment from officers and members about what had happened previously. And I do feel you have certainly given the impression of listening. And I have one final question. It's a proper question. With regard to all the mitigation for the Great Crested Newt, absolutely understand why that's being done. Is it reusable? And do you kind of take it all down and then it gets moved to another project?
Okay. So yes, the green thick plastic fencing is reusable. We will share that once it's come down with other projects. We tend to end of a lot of these projects have materials, not just environmental materials that can be reused on the projects. We either give them away or sell them away to other projects as well. So it is about trying to keep that material being reused rather than just being thrown away. So the idea is that it will last. It's got to be up for the duration of the construction. It's got to be at least 5 years now. And then, yeah, hopefully whatever we can reuse, we certainly will with other projects going forward.
Next, I'm going to go to our business board rep, Emma Garfield, with a question.
Good morning, and thanks for the presentation. I'm very keen to understand how effective your soil erosion mitigation measures are, given the extremely high rainfall we've had, and how are you measuring success? What are your targets for reducing impact, particularly on the watercourse environment?
Yeah. So we will look to seed a lot of our topsoil bands. So we will spray them with the seed. It will keep them intact. Once they're vegetated, it keeps the soil from washing away with the rain. And we're starting that program this autumn time. We'll also make sure that any soil storage is as far away from any watercourses as possible. If we have to store it close because of space wise, we put silt fencing up before we move it close by. So we need to, and we're trying to keep as well a vegetated area at least 8 meters away from any watercourses. So the grass will act as a bit of a filter for any soil rushing onto it. So trying not to have bare areas of earth right up to rivers where we possibly can. And that often is we can deliver that. Sometimes with regard to space for construction, we won't be able to, but where we can, we leave it as far away as possible. We vegetate it and we put the silt fencing up to prevent that from washing off, and seed them to keep them in good condition. Because a lot of these topsoil bunds will go back to they'll be part of the reinstatement. So we need to keep this in good condition and in good quality as well, because we want to minimise what we bring in at the very end of the project. With regard to monitoring and water quality, we have been doing monthly surface water and groundwater monitoring at a number of key locations. We did that about a year, 2 years before construction. So we've got our baseline, and we will continue to do that throughout construction, like I say, on a regular basis. And we will do it post as well, a couple of months after as well. So we've got our baseline, we've got our monitoring during construction, and then we get to see what it was like, at the end of it as well. And we can do ad hoc sampling as well, but we keep at minimum monthly sampling to keep an eye on the watercourses.
Councillor Gooderall?
Just one on that answer you just given now. When you replace the soil back to where it's going to, do you check that nature hasn't taken it over first?
Yeah, absolutely. Rabbits will move in, badgers will move in. We're doing soil bund checks during construction anyway. But a lot of the soil bunds now, when they're in place, will stay there for the rest of the construction. And absolutely, before we reinstate them, there'll be a thorough check. We have, as well as an environment team, we have an ecology team on the project as well. So we will send them out and check the soil bunds before we touch them at all. Yeah.
I often visit primary schools along the route of this project. I look forward to telling the students about the bat tunnels that they can anticipate under the new road. And if any watchers are concerned about the location of the black cats, which is a question I get a lot, they are safely being looked after at the project site office in St. Neots. I don't see any other questions, and so I would like to thank Anne-Marie and Penny for coming in and speaking to us and answering some of our questions. Thank you. Before we move to the next item of our agenda, the members of the public and our presenters are welcome to stay, but please don't feel obligated to stay if you don't want. We have quite a few agenda items. You won't hurt our feelings if you decide to exit at any point. The next item on the agenda is the director's highlight report. And so Judith Barker, our Director for Place and Connectivity, will introduce her report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Given the number Given the number of items on the agenda, I shall introduce it very briefly, and obviously I'm very happy to take questions from the committee. You will be aware that when we met as an informal group in September, we talked a little bit about understanding the new government's position. And so the first part of my report was really setting out some of those key principles from the various government departments, recognising that actually this committee's work goes across many different government departments, and I probably haven't done justice to the breadth of it. Obviously happy to bring more information to future meetings. I've also noted in particular, and we have an item on the Greater South East Net Zero Hub later on the agenda, that they have appointed a new independent chair. And I can say that that is Paul Jeffries, and he is taking up his role in October. I was part of the interview panel, and he will be formally chairing that meeting from December. In the papers, I attached what I hope was useful as a brief presentation of all of the things that the Greater South East Net Zero Hub do and their role. And I think one of the things I was particularly eager to demonstrate from that slide presentation is firstly the breadth of their scope, because they do work across the whole of the Greater South East area. Also their objectives, but particularly what they are working in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough on as well, because we've talked about what they're not and not always what they are. So I hope that's useful. Obviously happy to take any questions. We've also had discussions about how that fits with what is happening here in terms of the Peterborough Retrofit Consortium and also the Cambridgeshire Energy Retrofit partnership and how these things interlink. And we asked for some sort of definitions of scope. I'm sure that might be something we want to revisit, but hopefully that was a useful update. And we've also summarised, and it was of course in the forward look as well, the future presentations that we're looking to bring to ensure that we're all more informed about key pieces of work. So I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Do we have questions for Judith about her director's highlight report? Right. Well, I'll start with one. Maybe that will get our brains buzzing. I really appreciate the section you've written on the government's new initiatives, because we'll have to move at pace to follow on some of their actions. In section 2.2, you mentioned the government's new carbon capture schemes. I think we can all agree that reducing our nation's energy usage is actually of much higher importance than finding new ways to continue to burn fossil fuels and then find a solution afterwards. I'm wondering if, as a combined authority, members have reassurance that that is what this combined authority's aims are as well, to try to tackle the usage before we explore investing in carbon capture projects. That might be a question for the mayor.
Well, I'm not going to profess a huge expertise on carbon capture, but from what I understand, you need a lot of underground capacity and often quite near the sea. So I'm not saying that we would immediately be rushing towards any carbon capture projects. I would suggest that this is where the experts come in. We do it as a whole approach: reduce, reuse, recycle. That's a message that my kids tell me. I think that's a message that we should be working with between authorities. We should be looking to take on the challenge of the climate emergency and then move forward and do it in all ways, I think, but obviously reducing use and putting more carbon into the environment would be the best way to go about it.
Yes, as long as the reduce comes first. Yes.
I think we have to think at the same time of all things, but.
Councillor Day?
Thank you. My question was on 2.2 as well. It mentioned, I know obviously there's a lot in the reports and we've just got some highlights. It does talk about in 2.2 that the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero are looking to create good jobs in Britain's industrial heartlands, including a just transition for the industries based in the North Sea. I've done quite a lot of work around just transitioning and how that might affect particularly sort of working class communities or those sort of manual labour jobs. But I think that's something that, is interesting really probably to note, that I hope we would look at as a combined authority at the whole process of just transitioning, as we should already have moved away from burning fossil fuels, but as we begin to transition and it becomes more apparent that lots of jobs will change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. And I think that is an area where we've touched on green skills before in this committee. However, I think perhaps as part of the work that we're doing on the Climate Change Action Plan and looking forward, I think it would be really helpful if we engage the work of the Skills and Employment Committee and think about how we think about that more holistically. So we will take that away as an action, and thank you for raising it.
Councillor Dupre?
Thank you. Firstly, I think 3.1, the National Infrastructure Committee is the National Infrastructure Commission. But there's no point really remembering that because it's just been merged with another organisation and is now something called NISTA. So, just to point that out. But my question was about 2.3, is it? The point 1 on the previous page, on page 14, about the 10-year national infrastructure strategy. And it's talking about funding being linked directly to both economic, brackets, road, rail, energy, and social infrastructure, brackets, schools, hospitals, etc. Firstly, a point which I've made before is that there is a huge interest in building new infrastructure and not a lot of interest in properly, not just maintaining, but but providing for the future, the existing infrastructure that we have. And my concern is that we need to be lobbying for things that we know we have already as infrastructure that won't last the distance. And I've mentioned our soil affected roads before, which I know is highways and, you know, is transport. The crossings of the Ouse washes, which we've been discussing this morning, because those are going to be increasingly impassable with climate change, which leads on then to the other question of long-term flood protection and the 100-year view that is being taken and needs to be taken elsewhere about not only maintaining flood defences, which appears elsewhere in our agenda pack today, but actually ensuring that they match up to our expectations and our growing crisis expectations of temperature change and sea level changes. So my question is really, what are we doing to lobby on ensuring that the 10-year infrastructure strategy actually reflects those concerns, firstly about enhancing and future-proofing existing infrastructure, not just building new stuff, and also ensuring that it adequately reflects the need that we have here for proper enhanced flood protection, given that I don't see the word water anywhere in those brackets, and it's such a vital piece of our infrastructure, literally landscape.
I'm going to go to the mayor first and then Judith, because I think they both have comments they'd like to make.
It's already been done, already written to the minister about this issue. I have to say, I was about a couple of months ago, went to visit the mid-level commissioners, and ever since then I'm a regular retweeter of their work. I mean, that in itself doesn't solve the problem, but I think the issue was, you know, highlighted to me. It's and they have written to local leaders, county council and district councils, about the challenges that keeping up with the aging facilities of the internal drainage boards. And it was quite a profound meeting for me to go to that, because I you know, having moved to this area and recognizing the ongoing challenges, not just of this sort of unusual balance of water stress in some areas in the summers, but at the same time, 24/7, 365 days a week, we're at immediate risk of our neighborhoods and communities being inundated, but, you know, because they're under sea level in some areas. And if the pumping mechanisms, the IDBs, are not properly funded and have not maintained and not prioritized, we're making problems for the future. So for that very reason, as the mayor, I've already had that sort of conversation at the very highest levels. And I think it's also a point of what we are doing, and maybe Judith can give a more officer-based response here. We have the beauty of devolution now. We are lucky that we have a combined authority here. We are allowed within a new government who prioritizes combined authorities in the mayor on day 4 to say, give us the information that you need, that we need to kind of provide the solutions to drive the economy. I mean, and what are the challenges? And that is, you know, the lack of water in some ways and the need for a reservoir, but at the same time, the challenge of that if we don't make investments in our internal drainage boards and we don't look at the governance and we don't look at how they are supported going forward, we are going to have bigger problems. For all the houses that maybe wanted to be built across the whole of the United Kingdom, and some of those will be built in this area, nobody's going to thank us for building houses which then become flooded straight away. So the reassurance from me at the political level, and my belief, but I would say this, wouldn't I, that we've got a government that is really listening about this problem. And I would argue, hopefully, we will be seen as the trailblazer, because we're not the only ones with the challenge around flooding and significant number of drainage boards, but we are ones that are already at the table and making that argument.
Judith?
Thank you. And thank you for that contribution, particularly picking up the issue about water, which you're quite right that in that extract, it doesn't refer to that. However, what I would like to be able to sort of reassure you on is how we are considering two really important pieces of work that are going forward from here. And I think bringing these forward through this committee going forward will be really important. You'll be aware that we're obviously doing a great deal of work on the local growth plan that we've been asked to prepare for government. And there's some work that's been developed that sort of sets out some emerging priorities, and that work will go forward into next year, when I understand there will be some kind of agreement by the government to those documents. Now, in parallel to that, what we are also doing is revising, as you know from your papers, the Climate Change Action Plan. And I think what we need to do explicitly and actively is bring those two pieces of work together. So we are considering how we build in those points that you made, particularly about how do we maintain what's there, because that's critical, and indeed what are the key issues around growth, and how do we make sure that those proposals are sustainable. And the evidence base that my colleagues in the climate change team are bringing forward to help that process needs to be brought into that local growth plan process as well, both from a maintaining what's there and considering what might be there in the future. So I think we need to think about, that work is underway, but I think we need to think about how we make it more active, more explicit, and bring it through this committee for your consideration as part of that local growth planning. So I think thank you very much for raising the importance of it and airing that here. And we as officers will take that away and think about how we can build upon where we are now in that process to build sustainability into those plans going forward.
On the specific point about Fen Roads, we might be able to bring that up again when we talk about our budget. You'll see some of the budget being put forward, specifically looking at existing infrastructure and how do we adapt to climate change on that. I'm going to go to Emma, followed by Councillor Goodall and Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I just had a comment really on the conversation in relation to climate change and reducing our consumption, if you like, of fossil fuels versus carbon storage, and just wanted to raise the information that actually we've got a significant opportunity of building carbon in our farmed soils. So carbon capture isn't necessarily just about sort of high tech, bury it all in the ground. I mean, it is burying it in the ground, but it's a much more simple and affordable way of achieving that. And actually, in addition, that enables the soils to be more water retentive and will contribute towards flood prevention. That's not to say that everything Mayor Nick said about needing to invest in our drainage infrastructure is particularly significant and pertinent for the region, but just wanted to make that point about carbon capture.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm so thankful that we have that agricultural knowledgeable voice at this committee. I think that's often a voice we don't bring in often enough in our discussions. Can I go to Councillor Goodall, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to go back to carbon capture for one thing. For the simple reason is, while all the time we're still burning fossil fuels in our cars and everything, we must capture the carbon that's wasted and store it somewhere, because that is the prudent thing to do. By all means, yes, reduce it and bring in new ways of working that, and I agree with that. Going to the water problem, we still have this problem where every year we get flooded. We don't capture that water and store it ready for the drought. And also, with all our new building plans and the pressure putting on to our councils to build new housing, which we need, Anglia Water is shouting now saying we haven't got enough water supply for these new builds, or we're putting a strain on the water supply. Therefore, again, water capture is very important.
So I think Judith would like to come back on that point.
Yes, I think we've highlighted that we've got both too much and too little all at the same time, which is it's a very challenging reality. But you kind of think there must be a way of matching up those two problems. Very much a live conversation that we have both in the context of the work that the previous government and now that the new government is looking at in terms of the case for Cambridge, but also more widely. And particularly in the kind of future FENS work that Anglian Water and the Environment Agency are looking at. So very much looking at how we as the officers of CPCA can work alongside the other specialist organisations and those organisations with responsibility on that agenda. And one of the things we've highlighted at this committee before that we feel that we need to spend some time on water. And I can't remember whether it's December or early next year, but we are proposing to invite or have invited Water Resources East to this meeting so we can properly explore that, particularly understand what are in the statutory water management plans that each water company has to produce or are producing, so that we can understand that in more detail, and then perhaps also discuss how do we intervene most usefully as the combined authority. So hopefully that will give us the opportunity to really bottom out that particular area. Thank you, Chair.
So I'll go to Councillor Day, followed by Councillor Todd Jones.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm talking to 2.3, which is some of the PCA's and local authorities points on the local growth plan, the key themes. First of all, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm really pleased that when it says we want to expand and intensify our global significance centred around Cambridge, I'm glad it also says drawing on and developing assets and linkages with the wider region, because I think we do need to do that. My question really is around delivering a leading edge advanced manufacturing and materials powerhouse. I hope that includes net zero technologies. So that's one question. And then I've just come back from local government conference and there were lots of workshops on temporary accommodation. So I'm glad that we've got the new and affordable homes there. But what's classed as an affordable home is often not very affordable for people living in those areas. So it's a shame that we haven't got a mention of social housing. I'm assuming, but I don't know if it's, that actually some element of the affordable homes will be social housing. But it seems that, councils at the moment are absolutely, almost at breaking point in the amount of money that they're having to spend on B&B accommodation for families and individuals that don't have a home. So it's a couple of points on the advanced manufacturing, and then also, and it does mention in this that the housing communities and local government want to hand back power to communities in terms of building affordable homes. But there's real fear actually that the planning system is going to be changed that will take that voice away from local communities. So actually that's a lot of points, wasn't it? But yeah, on the advanced technologies, hopefully that is net zero, and about affordable homes, there's some concerns about that. And then growth for growth's sake and not having the correct infrastructure and all of those kind of things. Thanks.
That's a lot of great points. And Judith is going to come back on several of them.
No, thank you for raising them. In terms of the first point that you made about what is included in that advanced manufacturing and materials, I can confirm that it does include green tech and clean tech. So that's a straightforward response. In terms of the housing point that you made and the language here, I should say this is very much a draft document that I've used what's currently in circulation and what we're currently testing with government and indeed with all our partners. This might not be the language where we finally land. As well, obviously, we're aware that the government has been talking about social housing commitments. So that's an ongoing discussion. It may well look different in the wording. And my own background was in sort of social housing. So I very much understand the pressures and the challenges that there are in that sector, and will sort of continue to sort of advocate for that. In terms of the sort of wider position, obviously there are proposals that we understand, and in fact over the summer there was consultation on the national policy planning framework. Yes, so we did a response to that, and obviously changes are proposed. We don't know the detail. We haven't seen the bill yet. We haven't seen the response to the consultation yet. But obviously that is something I think as a system within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we need to think about how we're going to work together in the new planning system, however that looks.
Councillor Todd Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just referring back a bit to 3.1 in the report, and also just before that, the 10-year National Infrastructure Strategy. Until I was on this committee, I must say, I was aware of a lot of the issues that face us in terms of the climate emergency. But one of them, of course, is the supply of energy. And of course, we have a big debate about the nature of energy supply and how green that is. But in terms of holding back growth, and particularly, I think, in terms of our transport system, this is a major issue and something perhaps we haven't discussed particularly this morning, but is really critical. And a bit of an anecdote is that living near Cambridge Rail Station, the number of freight trains that are diesel operated that run through there, and I'm sure it's the same across the region, is quite extraordinary, really. And it just brings to mind the fact that without that electrification of the network, without the supply of clean energy, which is holding back growth and is referred to a little bit in this report, but perhaps that needs to be emphasised even more because that's so important if you're going to make this 10-year national infrastructure strategy work. So, and just a thought really on the report.
So this brings me back to the rail conference that the mayor hosted 18 months ago, perhaps, and there was a lot of discussion specifically about freight and how we link to the East Coast and that need for electrification. But I think Judith wanted to come back on that point as well.
Yes, one of the things I think is critical is the work that's later on the agenda in the infrastructure delivery framework and how we bring that work and the deficits and gaps we have in infrastructure together with the work that we're doing on forward planning. And obviously that highlights some of the energy, water, infrastructure, connectivity, and indeed blue-green infrastructure and biodiversity challenges that we have. And I think using that as a key evidence base and ensuring that those points feed into the development of the local growth plan and forward steps is really important. And that's something that we are working on, and indeed are working on within Place Directors, which is a group that I meet with at least on a monthly basis of all my colleagues in similar roles across each of the constituent authorities, in order that we're all collaborating to bring forward those issues within that local growth plan. So I think we need to continue that work and probably deepen it and develop it further as we go into the next phase of the local growth plan development.
I'm going to go to the mayor and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
I'm reflecting and listening in on this debate, and it feels that we're both talking about national issues, but also keep bringing it back to kind of local decision making. I just want to make the point, as I have done already, I think we are well placed to take on some of these challenges, and I think the real benefit is having the combined authority. The fact is that we are as representatives for different areas of the county sitting around the table today, talking about the environment, talking about infrastructure projects that will benefit all of us, even if they're not in our actually respective areas. And again, there's a danger you have been accused. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But I'm going to fly the flag for the government's direction of travel to push more devolution, some of the more challenging issues around planning. I'm very careful when I talk about this in terms of the potential for strategic spatial planning. You know, if that's something that is going to become the sort of passed on through new powers to combined authorities, whatever they are, not always mayoral combined authorities, we are well placed to seize those opportunities. Obviously, building on the excellent work that was already done in Cambridge City in terms of delivering large numbers of council housing, but also in the way that I can speak personally of working at Huntingdonshire on a planning committee and some of the ambitions that have been shown over the years there. So, yeah, I'm more positive. I think it's important that we talk about it. I thought, that to some extent, I should be certainly challenged as a representative of the Labour government and I'm happy to be about that and take that messaging back. But being in listening mode, a decision to that we do care about the environment, a commitment to working together, then we'll deliver for our communities.
Thank you for inviting challenge. I'm sure all of us will take up that opportunity and provide challenges along the way. So I'm going to move us on to that we were asked to note that report. There wasn't any vote required, so I'm going to take that report as noted. The next agenda item is about the affordable housing program. So this committee not only looks after the environment, but also sustainable communities. And so we've got Asma online, who's going to tell us, give us an update on the affordable housing program.
Well received from my end as well. I find that very interesting, and thank you for that informative presentation. Right, I'll jump straight into my report. I'm going to start off with that we've had 1,033 completions, and then got about 411 outstanding. Looking at the report in particular, we're looking at 24 High Street, Wisbech. There's some pictures there. We've had some structural issues there and delays because of those structural issues, reinforcing neighbours' walls and the walls within 24 High Street. That's going well now, and the roof is likely to be put on as we speak. With regards to Cross Keys Homes, British Sugar Way, unregrettably, has been delayed. Vistry are no longer on the site, and CKH have asked a third party to come in and do further snagging. There's quite a lot of snagging on the site. The pictures you see there are of the units from outside, but obviously the snagging's inside, and there's a lot of work to be done with the snagging. They have sort of anticipated completion end of this month or early next, but this could be changed because obviously the third party are quite slow at producing the snagging issues. With Stanground, the GFA is being finalised as we speak with the updated grant monies. The units are going through their final snaggings. As you can see, those pictures give a better curb appeal to that road in South Street, Stanground. And we're looking that they will be available for handover end of this month again or early November. Northminster has brought in 131 units. They were handed over at the end of September, so that was a welcome joy for the area of Peterborough. CKH have had a lot of interest on the site, obviously with the first block being handed over and occupied. We're looking at completion of the next block by January 25, December 24. And with the
I'm
final
going to take this opportunity for a 5-minute comfort break while we work on technology, and then we will return at 11:26. Oh, Asma, we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break while we make sure that your system is working.
Okay, sure.
So we're just going to reconvene the meeting. And Asma, we heard your comments up to, you were describing the stand ground site in Peterborough, but after that you cut off. So if you could pick up there, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Stand ground, as I'll just repeat again, had been finalised with the new GFA with the extra monies that were considered in previous committees. The units are going through a final snagging and we're hoping completion is imminent. End of October, early November, I've been advised. Just saying that the new properties have given the site a better curb appeal in the area of South Street, stand ground. Northminster, we've had 131 units in Block A. They've been handed over as of the end of September 2024. CKH have had great interest in the site, and the next stages are due to complete in December 25 and final completion March 25. There's Block B and a bit in the middle that need completing, and they're on track to do that. Great Haddon, as you can see in the pictures, those are some of the shared ownership properties. They are progressing well. There's just some issues with the roads, obviously going up to those sites, but it's going well, and that is looking to complete middle of next year as well. And finally, the Wisbech Road March. I've declared there have been many delays on this site. It has transpired that it's not just the weather, but they've had some issues with the section 278, where they were having problems getting that delivered. But there are many interpretations and a bit of a blame game, but now we believe that 278 is in progress and the services have been delivered through the site. So we're now anticipating completion will be the summer of 25. Since writing this paper, I would just like to mention that one site has been completed, which is the 46 units at Roman Fields and Allison Homes. There was one property outstanding that has now been sold. Previously it was subject to contract. So therefore the total is actually now 1,034. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Asma and the affordable housing program? Mayor?
Yes, I have quite a lot. I'm going to think it. So,
oh dear.
No, it's unfortunate, really. Just I want to. The first one is with regard to. I believe we delivered 800k homes. Are they the ones that are in this report, Appendix A, as SOAM PGH? Because that's the only one that has 8 there. I can't see any reference to the 100k homes that were delivered.
None of the 100k homes are in my affordable housing program, Mayor. They are not part of this program.
That's important to note. That I think is a starting point, because I then want to ask. The reason is that in other committees we've kind of had to pass on the responsibility for managing those. They've now gone to East Cambridgeshire, quite rightly, and that was done through board. But there was a specific highlighted concern about another 4 properties. Now these were the properties delivered for Alexander House, I believe, in Ely by Lara Developments. So I've got a few questions with regard to the work previously done with Lara Developments, which I believe is a company that is no longer functioning. Now, I don't know if you can give me any update about that.
I'm going to go to Judith to answer that specific question.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I could just pick that up, because the work that Asma is the project manager for is the affordable housing program, and the 100k homes don't form part of that, so they're not part of her brief. So I don't have the detail. I know the 4 homes that you're referring to. I don't have the details with me, I'm afraid. So if I could ask through the chair, if I could provide a written answer on the status of those homes, then we can sort of come back to you on that, please, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. That would be appreciated. The other point is with regard to sort of a wider point, really, where we have done work with organisations, but particularly where loans have been used. These were previous funds, and obviously they now have been repaid. Where there are problems with the housing in that area, in terms of maybe follow-up, current residents are unhappy with the quality of the work, do we have any liability, having used a developer with public funds to deliver affordable homes? Do we have any liability?
Yeah, I think that's another one that we would ask Judith to take away and find a very specific answer on a very specific question that we might have. At the
Yeah,
moment.
and I just apologise. I should have probably asked this before. It was suddenly in front of me. I thought, no, I think this is important that we bring it as an open question, because it's something that gives me concern.
Councillor Dupre?
Just a very quick request that a written answer on the question that's just been raised is circulated to all members, as this was a matter that was raised at a previous committee meeting, and I think some of us have quite an interest in that.
Could we add that to our action log, that we'd like that to return? Councillor Todd Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just following up on the Mayor's comments there regarding Lower Homes. I mean, I raised a similar concern, and I think the answer I got was that the combined authority doesn't have any kind of liability. I'm not sure about responsibility still, but Lower Homes ceased to function, and the housing site off Histon Road in Arbury in Cambridge is somewhere where residents have basically been left in, as I understand it still, in a very poor quality environment with unfinished work and materials left around the site off Histon Road. So I kind of raised that issue when I think Lower Homes went under in August, I think, earlier this year. But it would be useful to know whether we do have any kind of responsibilities in that area, although the answer I got at the time was no, but that would be helpful to have a follow-up following on what the Mayor has just commented on.
So it sounds like this is an important issue that affects several of our constituent authorities, so we'll look forward to hearing back more on that in the future. Any other questions on this item for Asma? Thank you very much, Asma. We've been asked to note this report, which we've done. No vote is required on this item. Thank you, Asma.
Thank you.
Agenda item 10 is the local nature recovery strategy, and Judith has a report to share with us about the status of the project.
I do, Chair, and thank you. And just by way of an explanation, some of you may be wondering where Adrian Cannard is, who typically has led on these matters. He is actually on extended jury service, and has been since the beginning of September. So that has been a little bit of a challenge, and also does mean you're going to hear rather a lot of my voice, unfortunately, for this meeting. But I can update you on the local nature recovery strategy, and also the further work that is going on. Again, I'll keep it brief, so there's plenty of time for your questions. So what you can see in the paper, that an update on the progress, but also that we're reporting, updating, changing the timeline from what was last reported to this committee in June. We have been really working very hard to hit the timeline for the draft strategy coming to this meeting, then going through the consultation process, so that then that strategy could come back through this committee and to board by March 2025. But during the last month or so, with our constituent authorities, we have recognised that this very complex process does need a little bit more work to be completed. And in particular, you can see that there was a steering group meeting held last week, where it was agreed that although the draft LNRS was shared and the mapping was also shared and discussed at length, there is a little bit more work to be done on the methodology around some of the detailed parts of the mapping. There's a little bit more work to be done in refining those maps, and in particular, and I think this is really significant before we actually have published papers at this meeting, making sure that we're fully aware of the interdependencies of this piece of work with our planning colleagues in the different planning authorities, and understanding particularly the issues around land ownership. Because as you'll appreciate, Chair, if you're publishing maps with proposals on for particular biodiversity reasons, obviously we need to make sure that that has been through a full and robust both understanding and check and challenge process. So rather than moving ahead before that detail was ready, we thought it was appropriate to continue to do that work through the steering group, and therefore produce a revised timeline and project plan. So I can reassure the committee that there is a draft local nature recovery strategy. You know, the chapters are prepared and read and commented on. The mapping is well underway. The mapping that sets the baseline has been completed, but the work that actually looks at how we implement the local nature recovery strategy and how you extend habitat areas and how you support species to be able to increase their numbers needs a little bit of further work. Now, unfortunately, that does mean, because we need both the time for different constituent authorities to look at the plan, and look at the strategy and look at the maps and then go out for public consultation, it does now look as if it won't be possible to achieve that before the pre-election period. So there will be a delay to the production of the approval of the strategy. However, we are remaining to work very much in collaboration with our local authority colleagues and bring that forward, and also work very collaboratively with other partners who are part of the project, including the Environment Agency, Natural Cambridgeshire, and the National Farmers Union, and indeed Natural England. In discussing this with Natural England, they've explained to me of the 48 local nature recovery strategies that are going through, only actually 6 of them are on target to actually get to March 2025 with a fully approved document. And indeed, DEFRA have now revised their advice and are saying if we've got a working draft by March 2025, they will acknowledge that that is in fact good progress in this very tricky issue. And they do acknowledge that actually that liaison with local planning authorities is critical to move this forward. So I hope, Chair, that acts as a useful update. And obviously, I know there's a lot of detail in the report and indeed in the draft document. So if anyone has any questions, very happy to take those.
So members, you'll probably agree with me that it is disappointing that the ambitious timeline we originally had will likely not be met. But to take some perspective on this, we are creating a document that will be a material consideration in planning applications, and it's important that we get it right. But also from speaking to my peers across the country, and I know you do as well, that my peers are quite impressed of how far we have gotten and how we are in the process. Judith was mentioning the number of authorities who are trying to do this, and how few are as far as we are for our region. So I am proud of that. Do members have questions or comments? Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Just a process question. There's a loop, isn't there, whereby our member, the constituent authorities have to endorse this. Are we saying that process will, that discussion at those constituent authorities, which I assume has to be a public discussion at a meeting, that is not going to happen before May now? Or will we have done that bit and it's just not the further consultation? What stages what stage will we be at exactly by March 2025? What will we have done, and what stages will be then needing to take place after the beginning of May?
Thank you. That's exactly the question that I've been working on with colleagues this week, because getting that final revised project plan so that I can circulate it and discuss it here has absolutely been the goal. So at the moment, I haven't got that final revised project plan. It will be with me next week. So what I would hope we can do, Chair, is circulate that following, in a couple of weeks' time when I've had the chance to check and challenge with colleagues. But what we are also looking at is a number of options, because certainly in discussions with the Chair, Bridget Smith, when I was updating her, she remains, was very clear to me that she wants it brought forward as soon as possible. However, we do need to be mindful of ensuring that there's adequate time for all, as you say, the different stages, because you are quite right. The process that needs to happen is it comes to this committee for sign off that we're ready for consultation. Then it needs to go to, it has 28 days to go through each, I think it's called technically supporting authorities processes. My understanding is that doesn't have to be in a public meeting. It may be delegated. However, each local authority can, I understand, make its own decisions about how it handles that process. But clearly some may wish it to be discussed in a particular forum. And then it goes out to public consultation. And then we need to produce the report of all of that process so that we can consider if there's a need for refinement and change. And at that point, we're then looking at a revised draft. So it's all of that needs to be factored into the project plan, and that hasn't quite been bottomed out yet.
Councillor Goodall.
I'd like to point out that due to PERDA, May is going to be impossible to reach, because obviously we're going to close down in March as a CPCA for the election. End of March. Well, it's 6 weeks and the election's the 1st of May. So April's only 4 weeks, 2 days. And so it's halfway through March.
I think that's what Judith is referring to, is crunching the numbers and working out the answer to Councillor Dupre's question of where will we be by March rather than where will we be by May. Any other questions on this item? I will bring one. I suppose my question is, are we confident that this process we're going through, it has top-down expertise coming into it, that it also has the bottom-up local knowledge coming into it? Over the last few weeks, Huntingdonshire at our full council have adopted what we believe to be our priority landscapes, that we're pretty confident in on what our priorities are in nature. Do we feel like that local knowledge is being sufficiently added to the process?
Thank you, Chair. I know that all of our constituent authorities are on the steering group, and therefore Huntingdonshire colleagues, I am sure, are feeding that expertise into the steering group. What we have now ensured is that each monthly meeting of the Place Directors group, on which Mike Gildersleeves, the Place Director from Huntingdonshire, sits with others, we are going to talk about the local nature recovery strategy, ensure that we have a good understanding so that we can absolutely set it in the context of the wider work. I think that the work has been led with very strong ecological input throughout, and we are keen as Place Directors that we ensure that it fits in the wider context of place in all the constituent authorities. And I have undertaken that I or my representative will attend the steering groups in the future to make sure that we keep a very strong eye on that and report back to Place Directors. So we are adding to the strategic position within that group and making sure that it is firmly within the fold of all of the Place Directors across all of the constituent authorities.
Before I move on to the next item, I suppose I would urge all the members of this committee to go back and discuss with your Place Directors where your authority is with relation to this project. 28 days sounds like a long time. In local government, it is very quick. And so we all need to be prepared when the document is ready, that our local authorities are ready to adopt that in whatever form we think it should be, so that the project moves forward at pace. We've been asked to note the report, which we've done, and no vote is required on this item. Agenda item 11 is the infrastructure delivery framework, the final draft. Again, Judith, another one for you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we had a informal workshop in September when we had the opportunity to look at this report. And for completeness, you have the full report in your papers, but also the slide deck that we used on that occasion, which I think we agreed had a lot of text on the slides, but hopefully did summarise what is actually a very long report. There has been a considerable process of working through this report, which has been overseen again by that Place Directors group that I've referred to since its inception last autumn. And at that point, obviously, you can see that from the report, the brief was set out to work within the local plans to see where the infrastructure gaps are to bringing forward the housing and employment sites within those local plans, and for that to be overseen by a group of officers within their individual constituent authorities that lead on planning, and then that report then made to Place Directors so that we could oversee that work. Obviously, during the last year, as we'll all appreciate, there has been a lot of change, including the government changing in July. And so since then, what we have been doing is looking at this piece of work in the context of how it feeds into the local growth plan and ensuring that it actually sets out an evidence base for then some of those points that are in the local growth plan. So this report obviously looks at 4 key areas. It looks at water, energy, blue-green infrastructure, and also connectivity, including digital connectivity. And we think that is vital pieces of information that then feed into not only the constituent authorities' local plans going forward, but also the local growth plan that we are preparing. In order to consider the critical question of so what do we do with this report? None of us want it just to sit on a shelf. It's what is the next step? So my colleague, Jim Cunningham, who is working both across the Economy and Growth Directorate and with me in the Place and Connectivity Directorate, and I are working to bring this report into the local growth plan development. And we have set up an internal workshop to think about, so what do we do about this report and how do we advance it? Both an internal workshop and a workshop with Place Directors, which is being held on the 20th of November. And the key outputs that we expect from those workshops, clearly there'll be a lot of details to be worked through, but at high level, we're expecting a desire for some infrastructure planning work to be done across the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And we are also expecting to review the pipeline projects and identify if there are projects that we've been talking about that would address some of those infrastructure gaps, how will they be worked up and developed? So there may be some individual project work looking at business case development, feasibility, etc. So I don't want to prejudge the outcome, but I am expecting the kind of overarching plan and some individual project work to follow this. And obviously this will provide part of the evidence base for that. And I would suggest that if at our December meeting, that I will be able to provide an update on that work in the context of how it's flowing into the local growth plan. But I hope that's a useful update, and obviously very happy again to take your questions.
I believe Councillor Gooderall has a question.
It's more of a statement, actually, Chair. At the work group, we was asked about local plans, and that East Cambridgeshire got a new one on the go. We are actually at our last meeting, we going to set up a working group to set up our new local plan and work together with everybody in the council.
Just maybe I'll ask a question then for clarity. So this is due to East Cambridgeshire doesn't have a current local plan as of now. Is that how this relates to the work?
No, our local plan runs till 2031, but we're starting to update and renew.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Councillor Dupre?
Sorry, it's going back to my previous point that I made earlier. The section on flood risk in here, on page 51, I think. Yes, 51. The second bullet point there. The wording is very much around maintenance of existing flood defences, and I do think we need to move away from maintenance, because the Great Ouse baseline report of several years ago, which is going to be is being updated and will be published later next year. The report that was produced a few years ago is very much about the huge investment that is necessary, not just to maintain it, but to make sure that it will adequately protect large swathes of the county well into the future. And that's, and I'm aware of obviously the FENS 2100 plus project, which is about exactly that. But I think we need to be very careful not to minimize the importance of that piece of work, but also the huge cost of that piece of work, which is a substantial barrier in itself, by using words like maintenance. And I'd like us to be a little bit more careful about what we say about that, because it's just so vitally important and so very, very big.
I agree. This is a very important point, and I'm wondering if perhaps we can add to our action log that should the committee agree to the recommendations here, we would like to be added in our the covering report that goes to board, that in terms of infrastructure, we'd really like it to be maintain and improve those infrastructure points that you mentioned. Can we take that as an action to the covering report? Yeah. Are there any other questions? Councillor Day.
I guess this is more of a comment than a question. We have a local plan, but we're in the process of developing it. And I felt when I read through the report that some of the themes and the ideas in it would be very useful to pass on to officers that were developing local plans for communities. Is that something I can do, or something that, yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Adrian Chapman and James Coleridge from Peterborough City Council and other colleagues have been engaged in this process and have been content for us to move it to this stage, and ensuring that they're content from a Peterborough standpoint. So absolutely very comfortable for that to happen.
Do any members wish to speak before we move on to the recommendations and voting? Right. So this is a voting item. Only members of the committee are entitled to vote at meetings, not co-opted members. Apology, Emma. And the chair does not have a casting vote. So I will read out the recommendations, and then I'm going to propose that we take them en bloc. There are two. The first is to recommend to board to approve the final report of the infrastructure delivery framework. And the second recommendation is to approve the next steps of the CPCA working with place directors across the constituent authorities to develop project concepts and an action plan to address infrastructure issues. Bit of a mouthful. I'm happy to propose both. We take both en bloc from the chair. Would anyone like to second that? Councillor Dupre got in there early. Great. I have a seconder. All those in favor of approving the two recommendations? That's unanimous. So the recommendations have been carried. That means we can move on to item 12 of our very lengthy agenda, which is the climate program delivery report. And I will let officers tell us about it before we ask questions.
Good morning, everyone. I think I'm 3 minutes in terms of getting that right. I'm Jim Cunningham. I've recently joined as Judith said earlier, the place and connectivity team, as well as and I've also been working for the last year or so with the economy and growth team. What I'm going to do today is just bring you the three elements of this update are where we're at with the climate action plan review, where we're at with the existing climate programme, and where we're at with the launch of and development of a new opportunity funding bidding round. These are all projects that have been approved by this committee in the recent past. So what I'm doing is providing you with an update on where we're at on those three elements. And, listening to the conversation earlier, even in providing that update, much of this is a moving feast because of other things that are going on that are tangential to this and impact it. But let's focus firstly on the Climate Action Plan review. We had a very useful session a couple of weeks ago with the officer members of that are supporting the governance of taking the review forward, and we used that as a sort of SWOT analysis to understand the feedback on what worked well with the existing Climate Action Plan, what perhaps didn't work well, and how we should best move forward. And the key messages that we took from that SWOT session that we had were that moving forward, the development of the plan has to focus clearly on being co-produced, co-owned, co-resourced by the constituent authorities and other relevant partners. And then in essence, building on what's happened with previous projects led by the CPCA is to get to a situation where we are providing that convening role as a combined authority, but all the partners are signed up, and what we produce is a plan for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough rather than something that's simply seen as a CPCA plan. And that was the approach we've taken with work around shared ambition, where colleagues around the table here and political members all played their part in the shaping of that. And similarly, that's the approach we want to take forward with the Climate Action Plan review. The report here today, acknowledges the specialist services and other plans that we need to make sure happen to feed in and support and give us a technical backup to any plan that we produce. But the other issue that's crucial in this is, and the one we touched on earlier when talking on previous papers, is the issue of plan alignment. It's crucial that and as the Mayor has said, in a period where the government is saying to combined authorities, we want you to show and demonstrate leadership in taking forward the regeneration and the supporting plans for your area. It's important that we work collectively to do that, and we have that shared ambition. So that will be an approach that runs through all of this, and those plans have got to support each other as they're developed. So, as Judith alluded to in an earlier paper, the climate change action plan has to be fully aligned to the local growth plan. The local growth plan's ambitions in terms of interventions will not be achieved without us acknowledging the impact on the climate action plan and vice versa. So I'm asking the members today to note and endorse that report, or endorse that approach. And I mentioned the work that we had done with the group a couple of weeks ago, the officers group, and what we want to do, as you'll see at paragraph 3.5, is ensure that process is repeated as we gather the evidence and we take the plan forward, with including political engagement, including senior management engagement across the network of organisations that will be involved in this, and importantly, wider stakeholders, including residents and businesses, on the vision and taking it forward collectively, so it is recognised as being co-produced and co-owned. The report, as I said there, has got three aspects to it. There's what we're talking about in terms of the action plan review, and then I'm going to talk about existing programme delivery, and then about the new opportunities fund. But I'm happy to stop at the session here on the action plan and invite questions, if that's okay with the chair.
Are there any questions specifically on the action plan review element of the report? Councillor Day.
Hello, thank you, Chair, and through you. Obviously I talk with my officers a lot on the climate change environment team, and have mentioned this. They talked about, they're really supportive of the 400k to develop this review and the action plan overall, and we in Peterborough can commit to participating. But I've pointed this out before, but because the Combined Authority have not allocated any of the 450 to local authorities to fund officers' input, there is quite a high risk from our perspective that it may change in terms of how much input we can put in, as our local authority budgets and resources have come under ever increasing pressure on us to really slim down on things. So I just thought I'd make that point. Thank you.
I would follow that up with something you mentioned, Jim, about how important it is that this is co-produced, but you also use the term co-resourced. And I think that's probably where a lot of our sticking places are in the months to come, that we, by this committee, have a climate budget and perhaps expecting our constituent authorities to co-resource the work might be a difficulty. Judith?
If I just briefly respond to say that our commitment is absolutely to work across all of our constituent authorities to ensure that how we're moving this forward is absolutely with you. So we can take away to ensure that we are making the best use of the funds that we have. The funds that we've got for the Climate Change Action Plan have gone through the process of being approved by the investment panel and the investment committee. But if they're we can obviously review them as we think about how we ensure that we have the right evidence base to underpin the local growth plan, as we were talking earlier. I'm not sure we're going to be in the position, certainly, to be able to fund individual roles. However, if there are individual tasks that we need to do within that process, that might be something that we can look at. So we will continue to keep that under review.
Jim, shall we move to the next section of your report?
I've lost my connection now. Okay, so the next aspect of the paper is around the current action programme delivery, and members will be aware that there are allocations in the CPCA's medium-term financial plan to take the programme delivery forward. I think one of the kind of key messages to note is that this has been let's say a developmental year, and in the mix of these projects just now, as we take them forward, there are challenges coming from constituent partners and others about speed of delivery, going through the processes, getting everything approved. I can assure that surely that from a CPC perspective, we're fully on that and moving that forward. The table at table 2.1 again is a bit of a moving feast. Since this was produced, some of the actions there on the right hand columns have been taken forward through the CPCA's governance. So all is positive. Where there are issues dated there to be resolved in the next, since this paper was written, they have now been resolved. They've been through the relevant governance and moving to the next stage of a CPCA funding and endorsement. So I wanted to give you that reassurance. The projects are listed there. Some of those are already underway and being funded, and the remainder will be all in place by the end of the year. And with these projects, and I suppose this is if necessary, a message that I'd want to constituent members to take back, and that is that we need to produce grant funding agreements around these, and that needs resources from a legal perspective from our own organisation, but also from partners' organisations. And what I've tried to encourage the team to do is work concurrently on the preparation of these documents, so that we're not stopping until we get to the, so if we have a concept paper approved, we don't wait until we get the business paper approved without starting to work on what the grant funding agreement might look like. And I would just encourage you to take that message back to your colleagues, that that's our intention, and it's all about getting a bit of speed and impetus into the delivery of the programme. Are there any, sorry, Chair?
Are there any questions on that aspect of the report? So the progress of the current action plan? No, let's carry on.
Right. The next one is the Opportunity Fund, and this committee has already approved the principle of that fund being taken forward, and The good news is that on Monday at the Combined Authorities Investment Committee, this project was approved. So it's now all systems go in terms of the development and the delivery of it. We've set out in the document some of the principles around the fund. So the fund is aimed at local authorities, public sector organisations, social enterprises, not-for-profit organisations, bringing together potential projects which will address some of the principles or all of the principles that are set out in the paper. We are working on detailed application forms, and we'll get those issued as soon as we possibly can, in order to keep the process moving along, as well as the paperwork associated with it. What we think is, and this came out, I think, in discussion with officer colleagues, we had talked about holding an event to launch the fund. What I think the better way to do that is, rather than gather people into a room and talk at them, is to get groups together online, provide them with the initial information, offer, because we recognise that a lot of the organisations that might want to come forward with this won't necessarily have the technical competence in-house to produce business cases that are, single assurance framework ready. So we need to make sure that they're given support to do that. And that can be done on a group basis, or it can be done with individual organisations by themselves. So there's every encouragement to partners and a communications campaign that will get the news out there, and they get that interest stimulated. I think it's important as we then move to the assessment of those projects, that those projects are all assessed on the basis of their fit with some of the strategic objectives that are contained in the document. But also, I'm also well aware of the political world in which we operate, and a sense that each area will want to see projects in their areas being taken forward. So I think that just further emphasises the importance of the communication campaign, the networking and discussions with colleagues across the patch to make sure that they're ready to bring projects in that do fit the criteria and are fundable. So again, we will do that from a comms perspective, but please rest assured that the officer networks that we have in place, whether it be at the climate change officers, the directors of regeneration in place, the chief executives, will be rolling that comms message and to yourselves as the politicians as we move forward. So I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you, Jim. Before I come to Councillor Gooderl, I have some questions. I'm a little concerned about the 10% match funding element. I think it might present accessibility barrier to some of the communities and charities and environmental groups across our region that might want to apply. But they do have the ability to spend hours managing a capital project, and that time could be quantified and valued. So I'm wondering if there are a few points that could be included in the guidance that's going to come out. I don't need the answers on these right now, but I think when the guidance comes out, if we could clarify, could some of the match funding be made up with capitalized officer time? Could that be part of their match? Could we clarify what the maximum level of administrative costs that we might allow when we're funding a capital project? Can we clarify if natural capital is valued as infrastructure capital would be? For example, the Huntingdonshire Biodiversity Project is a capital project, capital being spent on nature, and officer time being capitalized to deliver natural capital. So a clarification of whether this scheme that would be the same. And also the final one was, can we clarify if constituent authorities are eligible bidders? So at the moment, in the report, we have a list of potential eligible bidders. I'm pretty sure it does include local authorities, but we'll just be explicit about that in the guidance.
On that last point, I should have made that clear when I was speaking. I was conscious that from, colleagues had contacted us and you've not specifically mentioned constituent authorities. So to make it clear, constituent authorities are eligible to apply, and that was why I made a particular focus on that, but I maybe should have said more about it when I was responding.
And just to respond to the other points, I have had a brief conversation with Tim Greenwood, who's here today to present the budget report, and we will follow up and check that out with our finance colleagues in more detail to make sure that we can get responses to you and have that cleared in the guidance.
Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my first question's been answered about district councils being eligible to bid. Secondly, is £1 million enough? Because if you take the mean as about 100,000 being the mean between the 50 minimum and 150 maximum, that's only 10 projects in the whole of the area. We've got enough funding, as we can see in paragraph 4 of the report. So why can't we up it to 2 million and then replace that back if we don't have enough bids back in?
So I will start an answer and then Judith might follow up. Later on in the agenda, we have a look at our MTFS. Because the investment committees have approved the project as it is with 1 million, I would suggest that this committee recommends that the board considers continuing the funding, not in the financial year we're talking about here, but once we've learned some lessons from that 1 million and we think about future financial years and continuing that into a larger pot. But Judith, do you want to follow that up?
Thank you, Chair. I would have said very much what you've just said, that I think we recognise that as an authority, we need to do two things. One is we've already got, as you've seen in the paper, quite a large number of other activities going on. I'm really keen that we test this out, learn the lessons, and then if it's successful, we'll be able to go again, as it were. I think one of the important things is to recognise in the paper that we are aiming, as the timing says, to close the funding round in the middle of January, to go to investment panel with proposals for the fundable projects in February, and then investment committee in March. If we increase the scale, we're not likely to hit that time scale. So it allows us to move more quickly with a smaller number, test out our success, and then hopefully move forward with the lessons learned.
Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. If there's an oversubscription, what are the criteria then for choosing which projects go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. And Jim and I were on discussing this very thing. So what we are doing, Jim referred to the number of papers that are currently being developed. And in the paper, you can see a kind of sense of the criteria, but obviously, as you suggest, it needs to be more robust and developed than that. So application forms are being developed as well as the whole suite of paperwork that would then be available online for us to discuss with people. One of that critical pieces is the assessment framework. So in other words, what good looks like and how the system is scored. We haven't got that yet, but the team are working on that. And I would suggest that as a follow-up to this meeting, we can circulate that assessment framework here for your awareness. It will be part of the paperwork that we circulate, because what we are really keen to do, and I am very committed to this because I've seen and worked with this before, that if we are able to tell potential applicants what good looks like and what they should focus on in an application, the quality of their application will be much better. And so I'm very keen to make sure that we help our applicants with that information. Then it's levelling the playing field for all. That will hopefully bring forward a higher quality. And there will then be a process of ranking them against that assessment framework. So for instance, and I don't know that this is the basis, we might have a ranking that's between sort of 1 and 5 for value for money, and other things like that. In which case, at the end, what we would look to do is the highest scorers would be the ones that we would propose for funding. And indeed, one of the aspects of that process is there will need to be a moderation process to that scoring, because clearly when you go through a first scoring process, there might be some glitches that we need to look at. So the chair and I, when we were discussing this earlier, were suggesting we might have an informal meeting of this group to look at that initial scoring before it then goes through the investment panel and investment committee, so that you can be assured that the strategic direction of this group is being baked into the first round of these funding decisions. So I hope that's helpful in terms of setting out the process and the thinking.
Mayor?
Yeah, it's just to follow on something that you said, Judith, with regard to the assessment of the projects. You talked about value for money. Absolutely, got no problem with value for money, but that's not the only thing, and I mean, I don't know if you're able to kind of enlighten that a bit. Sorry, do you want to, Chair? You're in charge. You don't have to ask me to speak.
So at this point, because I have similar concerns, I'm going to propose that we add an additional recommendation to what's before us. So we have this would be recommendation D, and it relates specifically to the opportunity funds. And that would be for this committee to meet informally in January 2025 to review the opportunity fund bids before they're presented to the investment panel on the 13th of February. So you're right, the investment panel will be looking at perhaps the financial value and the way of measuring success for these. But I think that this committee is best placed to assess other factors, including especially environmental, looking at how those bids have been assessed before they go to the investment panel. So do I have a seconder who might, Councillor Goodall, seconder. So we will add that to our,
Mayor?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Sounds like a good idea, and I'll sort of just come back to that in a moment. Obviously, I'm on the investment committee, so as a representative here of things, but I do think it would benefit, and if there is a sort of informal get together of this committee providing that additional oversight, I think that's great. What I'm conscious of, and is really a question for Rena, is that in terms of improving the governance and of the combined authority at the whole, we're not. I know I've had these similar sort of conversations with Matthew as well. We wouldn't be creating something that kind of is getting in the way of the process of governance. That we need check and challenges. We need the people who are invested, the business board representatives. We need it from a representation of the thing where the committee is feeding into it. But I don't want it to confuse that, because I've already run the investment committee, and in trying to get it right has.
So I agree. However, I think it's equally important that an environmental process that's been instigated by the environmental committee isn't solely decided upon what's moved forward by an investment committee. I think that would be unwise as well. But Rena, do you want to?
Chair, can I just go? And just to say, the investment committee does not just consider value for money. I'm absolutely determined that when we make decisions, we also think about challenges around health. We think about environment on many levels. So just the investment committee is finding its way. Sorry, Chair, I'll sit back now.
Would you like to add anything to that, Rena? We'll just go to Judith for a moment.
Thank you. So firstly, I'd just like to say I would really welcome that discussion in an informal meeting, and I think it will be absolutely possible for us then to report the comments of that informal gathering to the investment panel, and so therefore it will go into the single assurance framework process as part of the information for the panel to consider, and we can make that work from a point of view of timing. I just wanted to come back and reassure the committee in terms of the kind of criteria. So we haven't got the assessment framework at the minute. However, the basis on which it would operate, and certainly I have used it in previous places, is effectively there's kind of three overall areas of scoring. One is strategic. So it's about the strategic fit. Is the project doing what we would like it to do to deliver the points that are in 5.1 of the paper? So that will be the first question. And for instance, they might be scoring 1 to 5. So if they're delivering a lot of them, you know, it's a really good project that's delivering across a lot of those things, you'd expect it to score highly. If it isn't, if it's delivering something that's irrelevant, you'd expect it to score very low, clearly. Then you'd have the kind of value for money impact. And that is going to be, and that can include things like, you know, what are the carbon savings? What are the, you know, things with environmental outputs and outcomes as well. So that can be evaluated as well. So it isn't exclusively about, you know, a benefit cost ratio driven by money. It can also be considering the carbon outcomes. And then the third strand will be about delivery. Effectively, can they deliver it with the capital and the money? Have they got the match? If they need planning permission, have they got that? Have they got a contractor that could do it? That kind of thing. So the kind of assessment framework that I would see is we would be picking up all of those things. You know, is it the right thing? What does it deliver? And is that a comparatively a good value for money? And actually, can they do it? And so the score would be across all of those things. And that's the type of scoring and report I would expect you to get. And we will expect at the investment panel, expect here in the informal meeting first, for you to be able to test actually what's the balance. What we can also do is look across those projects, because obviously there'll be a ranking. We'll have a situation where clearly there'll be some that are scoring better, some scoring not so well, and some in the middle. And we might check and challenge some of those scores. But what we'll also be able to see, and this plays to Councillor Day's point, you know, what's the geographical spread of these projects as well. So it will allow us to look at all of that and take some views on what then goes forward to the investment panel. So I hope that's helpful, Chair.
So I'm going to move us towards a vote because we need to continue at pace on our agenda. I have proposed an additional recommendation, which Councillor Gooderall has seconded. I'll read it out again, and then perhaps we'll vote on that one first. So this would be recommendation D, for this committee to meet informally in January 2025 to review the Opportunity Fund bids that will be presented to the 13 February investment panel. All those in favor? Okay, take that one as unanimous. That is carried. We have three other recommendations. Recommendations B and C just ask us to note the progress on delivering the projects. So I think we should take those as noted. But then we also have recommendation A, to note and endorse, that's note and endorse. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so recommendation A is to note and endorse the approach to the further development of the Climate Action Plan review for 2025-30, and in particular, to ensure the plan is co-produced and co-owned. Can I take hands in support of that recommendation? That is also unanimous. Lovely. We've completed item 12 on our agenda. And we will carry on to item 13, which means I get to welcome Maxine Nabra to join us to talk about, I'm just going to call it the hub, because it has a long and complicated name. Welcome, Maxine.
Thank you. The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero have launched an expression of interest for the Warm Homes local grant. This is an on and off gas scheme covering low income households living in energy efficient properties in England. The hub have delivered several schemes on behalf of local authorities who do not have the capacity or capability to deliver directly themselves. Our current consortium includes 46 local authorities from the Greater South East region. Just to note, this does not include Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local authorities who have established delivery models. Cambridge local authorities deliver under the Act on Energy brand, and Peterborough are part of the Portsmouth consortia. There is an expectation from members of our HUG2 consortia that the hub will continue to deliver schemes on their behalf as they lack the capability and capacity to deliver themselves. The HUG2 scheme has underperformed nationally and has been difficult and costly to deliver, resulting in financial and reputational risk to the hub and to the combined authority as accountable body for the hub and the retrofit grants. The hub team considers that there are risks in the design and challenges in the delivery of the policy for the Warm Homes Local Grant Scheme. Some of these are highlighted in the paper. The detailed guidance has not yet been published. In HUG2, this was not published until April 2023 after the grant award. To ensure we make the right decision for the hub and the combined authority, this paper sets out proposals that we should undertake a robust risk assessment alongside engagement with our local authorities and the hub board before a delegated decision is made by Judith as the senior responsible officer and Councillor Smith as chair of this committee, as the application timeline requires a decision between committee dates. The expression of interest deadline is the 1st of December, with all projects who submit being allocated funding in January 2024. We understand there is only one call for projects at this time. We did not wish to take the approach of submitting an expression of interest and withdrawing in January, as this would disadvantage local authorities who may be able to form a county consortia and submit an EOI to secure funding. We do need to undertake the proposed actions over the next 2 weeks to meet timelines for either submitting an expression of interest or supporting local authorities in their own submissions. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Do members have any questions for Maxine? When I read this, it brought to mind something that I'd like to add to our action plan, which is about this distinction between Maxine looks after this huge area, except for the authorities where all of us originate from, just because of historical arrangements that are in place. Could we at a future meeting ask Action on Energy and the Peterborough equivalent to come give us an update on how they might be doing in terms of the new government's Warm Homes project? They probably won't be able to do that until March, I would say, to know, at the same, they'll be going through the similar processes that Maxine is now. Councillor Day.
And through you, Chair, just to say that we certainly recognise we have got a Warm Homes scheme, a local area energy partnership. It has very much focused on, in the past, bringing homes onto actually just using gas. So some of those homes that don't have very basic heating facilities. But there is a recognition, certainly from us and the committee, that work needs upscaling to some extent to actually now start to look at the retrofitting projects. But it's a fantastic organisation within the council. They actually go to people's homes and assess their homes and provide advice and guidance on how to retrofit or where to get grants from. So, but my officers have also recognised the failings of the HUG scheme and what needs to be done to sort of make sure we can sort of implement that further. So, just really comments based on the presentation. Thanks.
Any other questions from members? So this item has several recommendations for us to vote on, and they're quite important to enable Maxine to move at speed with some delegation. So I think I will, I'm going to propose to take them on block. Are there any objections to that? I am going to read them out. It is going to take me a while. Bear with me. Recommendation A1 is for the Environment and Sustainable Communities Committee to note the national issues with delivery of previous retrofit schemes that the hub have delivered, the reputational and financial risk to CPCA and the hub. A2, for the committee to agree to the hub undertaking a prompt engagement exercise with the hub board and consortium members alongside a risk assessment to inform a final decision whether to submit an expression of interest as the contracting authority and accountable body for the new government's Warm Homes local grant. Recommendation B, the committee is asked to recommend to the board to delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Connectivity, Judith, and with the committee chair, Councillor Smith, who's not here with us today, to evaluate the engagement evidence and outcome of the risk assessment and to conclude whether to submit an expression of interest, as the application timeline requires a decision between our committee dates. Recommendation C is the committee is asked to recommend to the board that the hub is approved to apply on behalf of local authorities in the hub's consortia to deliver the Warm Homes local grant scheme on the condition that the outcomes of recommendations A and B does conclude that this is an appropriate decision and that the report this decision back to the board. So I think we agreed to vote on block on this one. Can I have all those in favor of supporting all of the recommendations? Oh, sorry. I'm going to propose that we accept all of the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Day? All those in favor? One, two, three. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Oh. So that recommendations are carried by a majority. And so that is, all of the recommendations are carried on block. Thank you, Maxine. Well done, members. We're on item 14. Moving along quickly. Budget and performance report. Can I invite Tim to join us, introduce us to his budget and performance report?
Thank you, Chair. The main part of this report is your budget monitoring report for the first quarter of the financial year up to the 30th of June 24. I think alluded to in the last report, the main area of variance is with the Southeast Net Zero Hub. This is a result of, as Maxine referred to, difficulties with achieving the scheme. And as I understand it, there is now a revised programme that's been agreed with DESNZ, which reflects those variances. Any expenditure on the Net Zero Hub is ring fenced, so there would be no impact on CPCA. The other part of the report is the appendix, which asks the committee to note the current budgets within the committee's remit that are contained within the current medium-term financial plan. Thank you.
Do members have questions for Tim? This is usually one where we have lots of questions. Then I will fire mine out. In some of the tables, there's a mention of a revenue program called the Rewilding Program. Do I know that by another name? Otherwise, that is something that I was not aware of. A revenue program, Rewilding Program.
I have to say it's all I know it as. I can go back and find out the detail of that program to find out what it covers.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you. If we look at tables 2 and 3, I'm wondering if you could walk us through one item as an example to help me understand what's happening here. Perhaps the Nature and Environment Investment Fund. So in table 2, just fine there. I suppose, could you just use that as an example and explain what's happening there?
If you take the tables, in the first column, you've got any actual spend to date, but that of course would have been up to the 30th of June. In the next column, you have a profiled budget, which is what we would have expected to spend by that point in the year. Then you have a year-to-date variance. Then if we move across to the second part of the table, you have the whole year budget, and then you have a forecast of what we think we're going to spend by the 31st of March of that budget. Then you get a variance if there is any. And in the final column would be deferral or slippage to a future financial year if there were any.
So in table 3, if I look at nature and environment investment fund, that would mean that so far this year, or as of 30 June, we spent none for the capital project. We expected to spend 100,000 by the 30th of June. So we have a variance of 100,000. But by April, we expect to have spent $1 million. And we believe our forecast is that we're still on track to spend that $1 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. Yeah, as the figures stand, yeah.
Can I ask Judith about that item as well? So this would be a £1 million capital project that we've spent nothing on as of 30th June, but we are feeling confident in our forecast that we're going to spend all of it by the 31st of March.
Absolutely. That's the level of detail on that particular line. I'm going to have to take away and get a response to that. But one of the things that I'm very actively working with Tim and the finance team is to make sure that we get monthly reports which actually show the budget and what the expectation is of that month, so that we get more up-to-date information, so we can intervene earlier and address and be all over that detail. That's still work that's ongoing at the moment, but I will make sure that we get a response on that particular line, and indeed any other lines that you're identifying that you particularly like feedback on.
I think if we think back over the last year and a half, the root of our idea around the opportunity fund was because of pots of money like this that had very good intention to be spent, and we consistently forecast that we would spend it, and then we realized in the end perhaps we needed to direct it elsewhere. So I am keen, as you say, to pick that up quite early on in the process to make sure our pots of capital are being used at pace to address climate action. Any other comments on this report? Right. We've been asked to note this report, which we've done, and no vote is required on that one. Thank you, Tim. Item 15 is our work program for the future. Do members have any comments on our work program, or things that you were expecting to see there that are not there, or the opposite? I think during the course of the meeting, we mentioned inviting action on energy and the Peterborough equivalent to a future meeting. I would hope that might come onto our action plan. And also perhaps in June or July of next year, a lessons learned report on the Opportunity Fund. And as Councillor Goodall mentioned, how we might, if successful, direct more capital to a similar fund in future financial years, if it proves to be productive. Councillor Day.
Yeah, this is a sort of an idea I've had for a little while. But I wondered, I thought it was great to see the Great Ouse Valley project. There are a couple of projects around the Peterborough area, sort of the outskirts of Peterborough. There's the John Clare Countryside project, and then there's the Great Fen project. And I wondered if committee had any interest at all in seeing some of those projects come to this committee.
May I ask that you make your contacts known to Joe, and then we can think about in the forward agenda of our meetings, if we have a few at each meeting, that would help. Mayor?
I'm smiling because I had to stop myself mentioning John Clare Countryside during the presentation. And it's simply because in 33 minutes that I've just been allowed, I'm having my meeting with Kira Harvey from the John Clare Trust. So I personally visited there and would absolutely get behind what's been discussed in terms of the idea of again, another quite unique area, very, very different kind of geography, but some fantastic sort of, particularly around the story of John Clare. And again, something that I think the Combined Authority should very much be getting behind. I don't know if Judith did. Oh, he's already on about that, but it is certainly something, a very different kind of designation. But again, I wonder, and I speak, off the cuff a bit here, but in the same way that the Great Ouse Valley Trust, we're talking about sort of a maybe halfway house to kind of doing designation. Again, I think it's something which, apart from just the narrative around John Clare and what's there in terms of the countryside and the history of the area, with the Combined Authority, I'd absolutely welcome. I've already had with the leader, the Alliance and everything, and Peter, about doing that. So if that's a matter of public record, it's something I absolutely would get behind with that. But it may well be that there are other areas around the county as well that would also suggest it. But want to crack both of them, ideally. Thank you. Great idea.
Yeah, I'm going to take the work program as noted and just mention that our next meeting is on the 11th of December at 10 a.m. In the meeting room on the second floor, near the mayor's office. Thank you for your endurance today and for getting through such a long agenda so efficiently. Have a good afternoon.